Good morning. Welcome to the Mean Stack MBA. Do you know what I mean? So me and Helen, we have I'm Helen. I'm Steven. I'm not Helen. I'm Steven. This is Helen. And we're going to talk about the Mean Stack, which is a really cool set of technologies that work together pretty nicely. It's all written in JavaScript. Mean is an acronym for MongoDB, Express, Node.js, and Helen, what am I missing?
Angular?
Angular, yes, but not necessarily in that order. What we'll be doing is we'll be creating a Twitter clone application called Chirp. And what we can do is we can create tweets, or not tweets, but cheeps, excuse me. And we'll be creating this application from the front to the back, building off of our previous Microsoft Virtual Academy videos on Angular.js, Express.js, as well as MongoDB. And this kind of ties everything together into one cohesive application that you can use as a framework of your understanding of the Mean Stack and go off and make your own Mean Stack applications so that you can divide and conquer. Anything else, Helen?
No, let's start with some intros. So my name is Helen Zhang, and I'm a developer evangelist for San Francisco. And specifically, I work with startups in San Francisco out of the top incubators and accelerators to drive adoption on Azure and to help them create apps for our platforms. So in my spare time, I also give quite a few talks to developer audiences. And I am a huge web development nerd, so I play around with frameworks like this all the time. I'm also a volunteer computer science teacher at Mission High School in San Francisco, and I'm a pretty avid traveler. My personal site is below, just a little plug. Steven?
Hey guys, so my name is Steven. Helen's actually my counterpart in San Francisco. I also work with some of the accelerators down in San Francisco, a couple of them like YC or StartX. And what we'll do is we create integrations between open source technologies and Azure to kind of ease those gaps and help onboard startups on Azure. I'm a JavaScript junkie. I run Azure. I connect to Azure basically from anything. I've connected from microcontrollers as well as Windows phones, Androids, iPhones. And I love just creating JavaScript experiences on each of those platforms. And what's really cool is that JS runs everywhere, and I'm super into that. So now, actually on the bottom of my side as well, I think I did do a shameless plug as well. So if you want to know more about me, you could definitely hit up my website. And I guess we can move on.
Yeah, so let's go over what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start in this module talking about the Mean Stack, going over each specific component, what it's going to do in our application, and we're actually going to show you our demo application as well and walk you around that. In the next module, I'm going to go over Angular.js, some basic concepts in Angular, and start creating our app locally. And then Steven's going to build out the backend using Node and Express. He's going to build out the APIs that we're going to hit using our Angular app eventually. And then in the fourth module, he's going to integrate MongoDB for our data source. Then module 5, you'll come back to me. I'm going to tie everything together, go and actually call the APIs that Steven's created and show that application working live. And then we're going to deploy all of this to Azure and show you some more resources in the Mean Stack community, some other generators or things that you can use, testing frameworks, and conclude from there.
What can they? Oh, okay, great. I was going to ask what can our users expect to know beforehand, but Helen beat me to it. So what can our users expect to have to know in order to be very productive in this Microsoft Virtual Academy?
So because everything we're going to do is JavaScript, we expect you to have a pretty good grasp of JavaScript, as well as some basic web development concepts, such as what an MVC framework is going to be. We're going to still go over quite a few of these things, but it'll help if you have that good foundation. So again, it'll be great if you have a strong grasp of JavaScript, if you're familiar with HTML, CSS, and with Bootstrap, or Twitter Bootstrap rather, which is just a great library for making a beautiful front end. And if you want to look at other resources that might help, there's an Introduction to AngularJS MVA. There is the very awesome You've Got Documents MongoDB Jumpstart that Steven was actually a part of. And there's and it's not listed here, but there's actually a Node.js MVA as well.
Stacy Mulcahy and Rami did that one.
Okay.
If you want to call them out.
Yeah, Stacy Mulcahy and Rami did that one. Stacy also worked on the Angular MVA along with Christopher. So Christopher's waving from the back for those of you who can't see. So if you want to join the MVA community, please do. There's a lot of really great online learnings like what we just talked about. There's over 2 million registered users, and there's a lot of really great relevant training, even on open source technologies like the mean stack. So let's really get into it. What is the mean stack? Let's actually show a demo of our mean stack application. And I'm going to apologize in advance because this is not the exact version that we're going to show in the end, but it's pretty darn close. So as you can see, there's an application we've built here called Chirp. We've lightly styled it using Twitter Bootstrap with a very typical navigation header you might have seen. We're going to implement a login and registration system, and people will be able to post into the stream. We've disabled the guest posting for now because, let's be honest, we don't know what all you are going to say. But you'll see us posting into the stream later on, and by the end, once you actually authenticate, you'll be able to post into the stream as well.
I think our users should be able to register already, right? I'm pretty sure.
You're revealing our secrets. I think it's actually not working right now because I tried right before this.
Oh, and it didn't work?
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
That's cool.
Sorry to reveal so much.
It's probably better. It's probably better
magic.
anyways.
Yeah, honestly, you have a chat, okay? Go to the MBA Q&A chat if you want to say anything to us. So yeah, let's talk about why we're actually going to use the mean stack. Well, as we said before, the mean stack is all built using JavaScript. As a lot of people say, it's really one language to rule them all, because you can build your server in JavaScript. You can, of course, build out your front end in JavaScript. And Angular even provides a nice framework for you to build out that nice MVC in the front end as well. Everything that we're going to use is completely open source. While they might be supported by larger corporations such as MongoDB or Joyent or Google, everything that they're making is open source, and you can go through and access all of that. Node.js also has a huge module library if you want to go and take components that you might need. For example, for authentication, we're actually going to use a module that other people have built on top of that. And it's really easy to get started quickly with the mean stack because, as you can see, we're going to build out a complete application in just a few hours because since the front end and the back end is all using one language, it's extremely cohesive. Everything we're using is extremely lightweight, and it's not too much of a burden to run.
That's probably why it's pretty popular with web developers, right? I'm imagining because the whole thing's written in JavaScript. So if you're just familiar with really good with JavaScript on the front end, you can make your way back through the back end and even through the database, because even the database is really JavaScript-like. So really, it's actually quite friendly for if you're just really familiar with front-end development and you kind of want to get into the back end a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually primarily a front-end developer, but the mean stack came along. Node.js especially was so helpful because I said, I don't want to necessarily build something monolithic with Apache or anything huge, but hey, if I can start up a server in 10 lines or less, it must not be that intimidating.
It ain't that bad.
Yeah, so now I can kind of call myself a full-stack JavaScript developer, and it's pretty great. So let's actually talk about all the components that go into the mean stack. As we said before, AngularJS is the A in the mean stack, and it's going to take care of our application's entire front end. It's a client-side MVC framework. So we're going to build out models to communicate to our views, which is the HTML that you're going to see, basically. And we're also going to have separate out our application logic inside controllers. This is similar to what you might do in the back end as well, only you're doing this strictly in the front end. So you're actually creating really good delineation between your code, and it keeps things very, very clean. AngularJS is open source, although it's maintained by Google. Google has dedicated a lot of really great engineers to work on AngularJS, and the driving force behind Angular is they're saying, you know, what would HTML look like if HTML was designed to be for building web apps instead of for building, you know, documents or hypertext?
I mean, before Angular, most people, I guess, were just using jQuery, right? And really just manipulating the DOM itself. And I guess Angular is really cool because it's kind of written as for the future of HTML in the case where you can just directly put into HTML what you want to data bind. And data binding really is just the concept of binding your data to your UI so that you don't have to explicitly say, hey, add this div, or add this thing, or change this value like you would do in jQuery. Instead, you just simply change data and magically the UI changes. And actually the vice versa works as well. So it makes it quite nice.
Yeah, and not to get into this too deeply, but Angular actually injects some, or makes available some attributes that you can put directly into your HTML to be able to start changing things around. So when you look at some Angular code, it'll actually look quite a lot like just a really nicely formatted, really responsive HTML document, as opposed to, you know, some HTML here, and then a lot of the logic is actually obfuscated in some JavaScript function in another file. So when you're looking at an Angular document, you'll actually be able to see, oh, you know, this is where certain logic goes, and it's really clean. And AngularJS is also really, really easy to test. It's built with, you know, test-driven development in mind. We're not going to use too much testing today just for the sake of time, but it comes bundled with what is it called? Protractor.
Yep.
Yeah, it's built or it's bundled with Protractor, and the Angular documentation does a really, really good job of saying how can you build unit tests for everything that you're doing, and how do you do a complete end-to-end test for your entire application. So where can you get Angular? How do you install it? It's really, really easy. You can just go to the AngularJS docs here. Whoops. I am going to click into this link. And you can actually install it straight from the Google CDN, which is what we're going to do. So you can get the minimified files straight from Google just by linking to it like so. And
so this pulls right off of the CDN, so we don't actually have to worry about maybe even like storing the file or serving it out itself, right? It just comes right off of that?
Yeah, exactly. And if you haven't used the CDN before, it's really great because once multiple websites and multiple people are hitting that same link, it'll be cached, and it'll be much quicker for your users to access instead of, you know, your users pulling the Angular file down from your server, you know, another site, they're pulling down exactly the same file. So it's just nice to have that be stored.
Some better performance there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
We're going to start out using just the straight Angular library, but later on we're actually going to incorporate some additional modules that aren't included in the basic package, so to speak. We're going to be using some routing and some resources, so we'll be getting to those files as we need them. So next, let's talk about Node.js. Node is the lightweight web server that we're going to use, and it's built in Google's V8 JavaScript engine, which is the rendering engine for Chrome. It's extremely lightweight and efficient, and as you can see here, these are all the lines that it would take to just start running a server. I'm not going to do this right now because Stephen's going to demo this later on his module, and I don't want to steal his thunder. But as you can see, it's extremely simple. You just require the modules that you need, and you create a server. You just say, hey, create a server, run it on this port, listen on this port, and this is what you'll send as the response to your clients. And as you can see, it's just sending hello world. It's extremely simple.
Super easy.
Yeah. And you'll install Node.js by actually going to the Node.js website and clicking download. Obviously, a bit more difficult than, you know, just linking to a file from Angular. But you can actually download the pretty easy Windows installers here, and you can also download the binaries if you care to look at them. As it notes here, if you want to build from source, you'll need, you know, Python 2.6 or 2.7. Yep. But I just recommend getting the installer for today if you don't have it already.
Yeah, most OSs are actually supported just right out of the box. They have binaries for. You could just, and especially if you're using Ubuntu or if you're using CentOS, Debian-based systems and Fedora-based systems, they have package managers which will just pull the version for you, and you could just do like apt install to install the version of Node that you want, and it'll just get going. If you are using a Debian system like Ubuntu or something, do note that the module will be called Node.js and not Node, like we'll be using on Windows. So just a FYI.
Awesome. And next, let's talk about Express. Now, Express and Node.js are kind of linked almost completely and tightly. And that's because it's actually a Node module. We're going to get into exactly what modules mean for Node, but basically Express is a really, really thin layer on top of Node that makes it much easier to interact with. So whereas you saw it in our code before, we have to manually talk about what we're going to send as the headers, and things like that. In Express, a lot of that will be sort of magicked away for you and abstracted away so that your calls are just so much more simple. This is especially true if you're making a lot of HTTP requests like we're going to do. We're also going to, of course, build out an API using Express because that's what we're going to use for all of our routing needs.
So it's going to be a web API?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And we're going to layer our authentication piece on top of Express in large cases as well. Express also helps you organize your Node app into an easy and cohesive MVC structure. So your routes will be in one place, your views will be in another place, your logic will be elsewhere, and that just, again, organizes your code such that it's a lot easier than having one monolithic JavaScript file for your server, for instance. So you'll install Express, as I said before, once you've installed Node. We're going to get into NPM later on, but that's basically the module library that comes with Node that you could the Node package manager that you can actually install these modules from.
So it's similar to like pip for Python or I guess
Gems for
Ruby or NuGet for .NET. It's just a package manager which allows you to not necessarily source control your packages, and we'll talk about this more. And instead, you can just keep a manifest, and it'll just install them whenever you need them.
Yeah. And as you can see here, once you have Node installed, it's pretty easy. You just call the package manager and you say, hey, I want to install Express. And next, MongoDB. So this is what we're going to use for our data store. And it's a top NoSQL database out there. Pretty much everyone's using or talking about MongoDB. And that's because, yeah, it's really, really great and it's really, really easy to use.
Did you hear about MongoDB? I guess they just announced about 2 weeks ago, MongoDB 3, which is apparently like something crazy, like 95% faster or something like that. So it's actually pretty exciting that they've done a couple of other changes too. Something more detailed features that we could talk about later, but apparently that just came out, so it's pretty exciting.
Oh, that is exciting. Mongo's already really, really fast, and it's known for being extremely performant. But faster is always better, right?
Yep.
Angular is also, by the way, coming out with a new version soon in Angular 2.0 that is going to solve a lot of the problems that people have found with Angular. Not that many. We still like Angular, but there's always room for improvement. So Mongo has really JSON-like syntax, which makes it, again, really easy to use if the rest of your stack is already in JavaScript. And it's maintained by the MongoDB company. They used to be called 10gen, and they
changed names, yeah.
Yeah, they changed their name because, hey, if this is a product that you're known for the most, why not just name yourself that? And it's primarily using just basic key value stores. So you'll download Mongo by going to mongodb.org and just going to downloads again.
And it'll take you here, and then we can see that we have installers binaries for most systems, and you can also build right from source, similar to Node. So it's pretty nice.
This is not the Mongo 3 that we talked about. This is, as you can see,
this is still 2.6.7.
Yeah. Just so you guys don't get confused. And anything you want to add? Anything you want to prep our viewers for?
No. So I guess the cool thing is maybe the why of mean stack as well. It's not only because it's JavaScript, but it's also quite flexible and scalable. So a few of the things that are really nice is that MongoDB doesn't actually enforce like actual schemas, so we can be agile. It could change things as your business needs change. Angular is really good because it's a single page application, so it's really responsive. So you don't really have to wait for pages to flip or things like that. And Node.js is actually quite scalable. It's a single threaded application, but it's really good about handling asynchronous calls and managing a lot of different tasks at once, which really creates a high level of throughput for especially IO-intensive tasks, such as a web server, which might have thousands of requests a day, and it can serve all those really quickly. So not only is it all JavaScript based, it's actually quite performant, and it's something that you should take a look into as a more modern application stack that you might be interested in migrating over to. I think that's about it for our Module 5 section, or Module 1 section. Wow, I am way early. It's still the morning here in Seattle, so as you know, I know there's a lot of viewers around the world, so we're just getting our day started. With that, I guess we can go ahead and call this module completed. We've kind of brought in the fundamentals of the mean stack. We showed you the application that we're going to build, and in the next module,
we're going to start building right from scratch. We're going to start from an empty folder, build out the complete, well, not the complete Angular side, but an Angular side that doesn't need a back end, and just go straight from there. Every module that we're going to create will pick right off of where the last ones ended.
Yeah, and all these are hosted on our GitHub repository, which is, Christopher said, Microsoft.
It's github.com, whack Microsoft Learning, whack chirp.
Yeah, so I pulled it up here. So if you want to go to my screen real quick, it's github.com/Microsoft Learning/chirp. We're going to actually go over each section in order, and each section is going to have their own readmes, which will take you through the code that we're going to go through. So you could take a look at that if you want to right now, but we're going to come back and get started with Module 2.